Hello and welcome back to another video. My name is Farhan, also known as Gunner Since 96, and today we are discussing players on their last year's worth of contract, and we're also going to be looking ahead to players that are on their last 2 years worth of contract, because we know what the club stance is on players with 2 years or less. We either renew them or we sell them. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. If you're new to the channel, what I do is I make Arsenal content every single day, and if you're an Arsenal fan, I definitely think you should consider subscribing to the channel and hitting that bell notification as well, just so you're notified every time I release a video. I know there's a lot of content makers out there, Arsenal content makers out there, but I hope to add a little bit of edge to my content, talking about things like this, which is important to look ahead into the future. We're approaching the game against Leeds, and I thought before that we'd get we talk about some of the areas that we haven't talked about all season, but that we'll definitely be talking about this in the summer. Now let's get straight into it and talk about players' contracts that are going to be expiring at the end of this season, and there's only really one who is part of the permanent setup, which is David Luiz. This is a very, very interesting player for me, because David Luiz, for the most part this season, has done a fairly good job. He has he's put his wealth of experience in that back four, and he has made it count for something. He's looked pretty stable, more stable this season than I have seen him before. I like to think that despite that, crazy red card that he got against Wolves, he had been doing pretty well, and some of the young guys at the back, like Holding, like Gabriel, like Tierney, Ainsley Maitland-Niles to some extent as well. He's been a really, really good role model for these guys, and I think the plan for Louise was to get these guys up to scratch with all of the things that you need to do to play week in, week out, and he's done that really well. So hats off to him for the value that he's added to that back four, because we have looked solid despite the results, despite where we are in the league. We've looked a lot more solid in the back than we have done under Unai Emery and under Arsene Wenger. We went years with this problem, this defensive problem that kept on coming back to bite us on the backside, and now we have finally sorted that out under Arteta, with David Luiz very much in the heart of it. Not to forget as well, Pablo Mari, again, Holding to some extent. I like to say I'm still giving him to the end of the season before I make my mind up about him. So does David Luiz deserve to be given a contract extension? In my head, I personally say no. We've got plenty more of upcoming defenders that can now fill in and that can now step in to do the job. So when Luiz eventually leaves, which I truly believe he will leave, and I hope he does, because I don't think it's wise for us to give he's going to turn 34 in April, in a couple of months, so a player another year's worth to play here. If I was him, I'd probably go to the US or China or somewhere like that, maybe Saudi Arabia, to end his career there on a high paycheck. But look, you've got, like I said, you've got Mari, you've got Gabriel, you've got Holding, you've got Chambers to some extent as well, which is another player we're going to talk about. But those three definitely have the wealth of the experience this season, definitely to kickstart their careers in centre-back playing for Arsenal, I hope. And obviously we have three others on loan. So Matt Ryan's contract ends this season, at the end of this season. Whether we sign him up on a permanent deal, we're yet to see. I'm pretty confident that we will. Against Aston Villa, he put in a very solid performance. He looked really comfortable at the back. I was really glad to see him there. Other than that first goal, obviously. Dani Ceballos, I'm pretty fairly confident that he will go back to Madrid. He did say in a recent interview that he wants to win the hearts of Madrid fans, and he wants to put on that white jersey again and win Zidane's heart as well. So, but then again, it all depends on who takes over at Madrid. Whether Zidane will still be in charge or whether they get him out and get someone else in, who knows? But I'm fairly confident Dani Ceballos will be on his way out as well. And finally, Martin Odergaard. This is a really interesting conversation to have as well, because we know before Odergaard came to the Emirates, we were all familiar with the style of football that he played, with the talent and the ability that he had, what he had done at Real Sociedad, and a fairly good idea of what he was going to bring to Arsenal. And in the game against Aston Villa, he showed us that he was, he backed up all of the hopes that we had about him. A really dynamic and technical attacking midfielder, being able to play the ball direct rather than down the flanks, very inventive, able to pull players out of position, able to involve everyone around him and open up the game a little bit more as well. So I'm hoping that he starts against Leeds and we'll get a better idea of whether he can be suited for the Premier League or not. But if he does have a successful loan season, you have to think that Arsenal will try and go for someone like that. They'll try and at least spark a conversation about either sending him back out on loan like they did with Dani Ceballos for a year, or potentially, a transfer with maybe a player swap. I don't know, but it seems as if he's fallen out of favour with Zidane. Zidane has said a nice few words about him recently, but we'll have to see at the end of the season, because it comes down to the player as well, whether he enjoys his time at Arsenal or not. So that will be a one to keep an eye on. Now, players that are on their last year's worth of contract, which means that their contracts will expire next summer, are a good handful. We have 4 starting 11 players, 4 players in the first team whose contract expires. And I'm going to start off with Alex Lacazette. Lacazette's contract expires next summer. He's currently 29 years old, which means the next contract he signs will be, like Aubameyang did, potentially the last big one. And if Arsenal decide to offer him a contract extension, that means that they're banking on him to bring the goals for Arsenal for the next 2 or 3 seasons. My stance on Lacazette is that I believe Arsenal should have sold him in the summer. They really should be looking at trying to shift him on this summer as soon as possible, whilst his value is quite high at the minute, because eventually it will decline. And actually it's on its decline, because as you sort of get past that 29 years age, 28, 29, your value does start to decrease as a footballer. And look, as well as he's done this season, I don't think Lacazette is the type of striker that we are needing at this very moment in time. When the game against Villa showed me that if there's anyone that we should be going for, it's an Ollie Watkins style striker, dynamic, mobile striker that likes to run in between the lines, that likes to get behind the defence, that likes to put himself out on the wing on occasions as well. A real handful for the defenders to deal with. Whereas Lacazette, on the other hand, is a little bit more static. He tends to sit a bit deeper as a false 9 and likes to get everyone else involved in the game, like Pepe, like Saka, Emile Smith-Rowe as well. He loves to play with Saka and Emile Smith-Rowe, and he's a very good link up. He's very good at linking the play. And look, as well as he's done, I think his time is done. I think it's time we get him out as soon as possible and bring someone else in. And that brings me on to the next person who's on his final year at Arsenal, which is Eddie Nketiah. What do we do with Eddie Nketiah? This is a man, or a kid, I should say. He's still a kid. He's not really. He's 21 years old. He's going to turn 22 in May. And my stance on Eddie Nketiah is that there is definitely a player there that is suited for a different team in the Premier League, but not at Arsenal. He reminds me very much of a sort of Olivier Giroud type player, stroke Bentner. Maybe I'm doing him a disservice by saying that, but he's a typical striker where he likes to linger in and around the box and have the ball be fed to him rather than search for the ball. And we've been missing a striker like that, who goes out there and who tries to get the ball and make things happen with himself, or definitely at least tries to get as involved as possible. I think after Robin van Persie, we were missing someone of that stature. And Eddie Nketiah, for me, does not strike me as the type of player who is capable of doing that. Whereas Balogun, on the other hand, is that. He is dynamic, he is mobile, he is everywhere. He likes to get the ball, he likes to pick it up from deep and turn and run, and Nketiah just doesn't do that, and I don't think that's it, that those are his strengths. So what do we do with Nketiah? If Arsenal decide to offer him a contract, they're essentially saying that we are banking on this kid to carry the club for the next few years, because they'll either offer him a 4-year or a 5-year contract. And I strongly believe that if you are offering someone a 4 or 5-year contract of that age, you are essentially telling them you're the man to carry us forward. And I hope that's not the case. I hope they move him on as well. I hope they move him on this summer. Lacazette and Eddie Nketiah are two players that you definitely have to say that will need to be moved on ASAP for us to get as much as possible out of them. Callum Chambers is another player who's on his last year. I genuinely believe the club will move him on. I feel so bad that he hasn't had the luck that you need to succeed at Arsenal. I genuinely believe that he was going to be a really, really good player. Every time he's played for us, he has shown signs of being a really reliable centre-back, someone with some quality, someone with the ability to do a good job. I would put him above Holding from the games that he has played for us previously, but obviously because of the injuries, is he reliable enough to continue playing at the club? He's 26 years old. If you're going to give him a contract again, it will run until his 30s, or until he's definitely 30 years old. He's probably at the door as well. El Neni, another guy on his on his last year at Arsenal, and 28 years old. Again, if you offer him a 3-year contract, you're telling him he'll be here in his 30s. The thing with El Neni is that if you had asked me what I think of El Neni before his loan spell at Besiktas, I would have said get rid of him as soon as possible. Since he's come back, he's impressed. And the thing with El Neni is that he's shown me he doesn't need to be a starter. He doesn't need to be a first team player. You can play him in the odd games, and you can play him as a squad player, put him on a bench, bring him on, and he'll be more than happy to do that. And so I'm in a little bit of a predicament when it comes to El Neni, because I understand that in order to see the season out successfully, you need a squad. You need a real squad of players. And I think having El Neni has its perks, because he's not the type of player to get injured all the time. He can do a job. He can come in and do a job. He's almost a like for like with Granit Xhaka. As a defensive midfielder, he sits deep. He can run with the ball. He can provide passes. He is a very safe option to have. So do I think Arsenal should offer him a 3-year contract? I think yes, rather than spending 20-25 mil on someone else, or rather than because you would expect Arsenal to maybe potentially sell Granit Xhaka and get an upgrade on him using the funds that they get from Xhaka and other sales, but then you need someone else to come on in the 75th minute when the game's done and dusted, or you need someone to play as a squad rotation player, and I think Oneni's that type of player. Look, I'm going to leave it there. I know I said I was going to talk about players with 2 years left on their contract, but I've decided not to. I think it's important right now that we focus on these players, because there are a large bunch. There are at least 5-6 players on that list that need to be addressed, that need to be thought about. And I think the sooner that Arsenal think about or act, because I think the season is done now, and now is the time to start planning. And so the sooner that they plan and the sooner that they decide what they want to do with these guys, the sooner we can think about getting personnel in, getting the right groups of players together, making them gel, getting the right qualities in there as well, and hopefully turning the season around when we get to next season. yeah, so thank you very much for watching. If you did enjoy this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Like I said, if you're an Arsenal fan and if you're looking for more Arsenal content, I highly advise that you consider subscribing to the channel. Hit that bell notification to be notified as well. And I'll be back tomorrow to talk about something else, whether it be the latest round of news, or I was thinking of discussing the best players at Arsenal who have done really well this season and the players that have underperformed. It'll be one of those videos, but until then, stay home, stay safe, enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you. Bye bye.